She opened the navigation app on her phone. Slowly, she typed the address from the apartment documents. The map appeared. Only 15 minutes away. Her fingers hovered over the steering wheel. No, she couldn't. She shouldn't. Then she remembered Daniel's smile whenever Vanessa's messages appeared. Lily asking why Daddy always whispered. The hidden apartment. The lies. She started the engine. The drive felt much longer than 15 minutes. Every traffic light seemed to last forever. Finally, she turned into a quiet street, lined with modern apartment buildings. The address matched. Her pulse quickened. She parked across the road. People came and went. Young professionals, couples, families. Nothing unusual. Then, a familiar black SUV turned the corner. Daniel. He parked in the underground garage entrance. A few moments later, he emerged from the elevator inside the building's glass lobby. He wasn't carrying a laptop. He wasn't meeting clients. He looked around briefly, then smiled. Vanessa walked toward him. She wasn't dressed for work. She wore jeans and a cream-colored sweater. She reached him. Without hesitation, she wrapped her arms around him. Daniel embraced her just as tightly. Amelia couldn't breathe. The world around her seemed to fall completely silent. No business meeting. No client lunch. No misunderstanding. No innocent explanation. She watched the man she'd loved for more than a decade kiss another woman with the tenderness he'd once reserved only for her. 1,000 memories flashed through her mind at once. The resignation letter she'd signed. The nights she'd stayed awake helping him build his company. The dreams she'd postponed. The family she'd protected. Every sacrifice. Every promise. Every lie. A tear rolled silently down her cheek. She didn't scream. She didn't confront them. She simply watched as Daniel and Vanessa disappeared into the apartment building together. The entrance doors closed behind them. With them, the last fragile piece of Amelia's faith in her marriage quietly shattered. Amelia remained in the driver's seat long after the glass doors closed. She didn't start the engine. She didn't wipe away the tears. She simply stared at the entrance, hoping, against all reason, that Daniel would walk back out alone and explain everything. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 20. He never came out. The truth no longer needed confirmation. It had revealed itself without a single word. Her hands trembled as she reached for the notebook she had begun carrying in her handbag. She opened to the page titled "What I Know." With slow, deliberate handwriting, she added one more line. I saw Daniel embrace and kiss Vanessa outside the apartment on Hawthorne Street. She stopped writing. For a long moment she stared at the sentence. There it was. Not a suspicion. Not a fear. A fact. She closed the notebook, placed it back in her bag, and drove home. The house felt strangely peaceful. Lily was spending the afternoon with a friend, leaving the rooms unusually quiet. Amelia walked into the kitchen and instinctively reached for 2 mugs before stopping herself. She put one back. She wasn't sure why such a small act hurt so much. The kettle whistled. She poured herself tea and sat at the dining table. Her mind replayed years of memories. The first apartment. The nights they ate cheap pasta because every spare coin went into Daniel's dream. The weekends she had spent designing presentations while he slept. The day she handed in her resignation. She remembered what Daniel had said as they drove away from her office. You don't need to carry this anymore. How ironic. She had carried everything. She had carried the finances. She had carried the home. She had carried his fears. She had carried his ambitions. And now, she was carrying the weight of his betrayal. That evening, Daniel came home smiling. You won't believe the traffic. Amelia looked at him quietly. I can imagine. He loosened his tie. I ended up stuck in meetings for hours. Meetings? The word echoed in her mind. She watched him carefully. He was lying as easily as he breathed. He kissed her cheek. "How was your day?" She looked into his eyes. "I learned something important." His smile faltered for the briefest moment. "Oh? Yes. What was that?" She held his gaze. "That people eventually reveal who they really are." For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel laughed nervously. "That's philosophical. Maybe." He searched her face, almost as if trying to determine whether she knew something. If he suspected anything, he kept it to himself. "I should shower before dinner." She nodded. "I'll start cooking." As he disappeared upstairs, Amelia realized something unexpected. She wasn't angry anymore. Not in that moment. She felt calm. A dangerous kind of calm. Because certainty had replaced doubt. Later that night, while Daniel slept, Amelia quietly walked into the study again. This time, she wasn't looking for answers. She was looking for understanding. She unlocked the hidden cabinet and removed the black document case. Inside the folder marked private, she examined every page more carefully. One invoice caught her attention. Interior design services. The apartment had been furnished luxuriously. Designer furniture. Artwork. Kitchen appliances. Every receipt had been approved by Daniel himself. She flipped to another page. Utility bills. Electricity. Internet. Water. All paid automatically. Month after month. For 18 months. 18 months. The affair had lasted at least that long. Possibly longer. Then something else caught her eye. A lease agreement. Not for the apartment, for a storage unit. Unit 317. She stared at the tiny brass key lying beside the folder. It wasn't for the cabinet at all. Someone had simply hidden it there. The number matched perfectly. Storage Unit 317. Her heartbeat quickened again. What was inside? The next morning, after Daniel left for work, Amelia drove to the storage facility. She almost turned around twice. What if she was making a mistake? What if opening the unit changed everything? Then she reminded herself. Everything had already changed. The security guard smiled politely. "Good morning." She held up the key. "I need to access Unit 317. He glanced at the key. Certainly. He barely looked at her. The account was clearly in order. He pointed toward the far end of the building. Last corridor on the right. The metal door of Unit 317 stood before her. She inserted the key. Her hand hesitated. Then, click, the lock opened. She slowly rolled the door upward. At first, nothing seemed unusual. A few cardboard boxes, plastic storage containers, a wardrobe rack. Then her eyes adjusted. The boxes weren't labeled with company names. They were labeled in Daniel's handwriting. Family photos, office archives, personal. She stepped inside. The first box contained old photo albums. She frowned. Why would family photographs be hidden in a storage unit? The second box held company files. Nothing remarkable. Then she opened the container labeled personal. Inside were dozens of letters. Most were unopened, all addressed to Daniel, from banks, lawyers, investment firms. She picked up one envelope. It had already been opened. The letter inside mentioned transferring ownership of several investments, not into Daniel's name, into another company's name, the same company that owned the apartment. She took a slow breath. This wasn't just an affair. Daniel had been moving assets, quietly, carefully, for months, maybe years. She reached deeper into the box. At the very bottom lay a small leather-bound notebook. She opened it. It wasn't Daniel's handwriting. It belonged to someone else. The first page read, Expenses, Hawthorne Apartment. Below it were detailed monthly entries. Furniture, groceries, vacations, restaurant bills, gifts, everything meticulously recorded. Then Amelia turned the page. Her heart stopped. One line was circled. Anniversary weekend, coastal retreat. Date. Exactly 1 year earlier. The same weekend Daniel had told Amelia he was attending a leadership conference. She remembered staying home with Lily, comforting her through a fever, while Daniel claimed he was in meetings. He hadn't been in meetings. He had been celebrating an anniversary, just not with his wife. Amelia closed the notebook slowly. Tears blurred her vision, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not anymore. Instead, she took out her phone. She photographed every document, every receipt, every page. Then she carefully returned everything exactly as she had found it. She locked the unit, walked calmly back to her car, and sat behind the steering wheel. For several minutes, she simply stared ahead. Then she whispered something she never imagined she would say. "My marriage is over." The words hurt. But they also brought something unexpected. Freedom. Because once the truth is fully exposed, you no longer waste your life trying to explain the lies. She started the engine. For the first time in months, she wasn't driving home to save her marriage. She was driving home to save herself. Amelia pulled into the driveway just as the afternoon sun dipped behind the trees. She sat in the car for a few extra moments, gripping the steering wheel. When she finally stepped inside, the house looked exactly as it always had. Lily's backpack rested beside the front door. A pair of Daniel's shoes lay near the hallway. The scent of lavender lingered from the candle Amelia had lit that morning. Nothing had changed, yet everything had. She looked around the home she had spent years creating. Every painted wall, every carefully chosen piece of furniture, every framed family photograph. She had believed this house represented security. Now it felt like a carefully constructed illusion. "Mommy!" Lily came running from the living room and threw her arms around her. "I made something." Amelia smiled warmly despite the heaviness in her heart. "What did you make?" Lily proudly held up a colorful drawing. It showed 3 people holding hands beneath a bright yellow sun. Above them she'd written, in large uneven letters, "My happy family." Amelia felt tears threatening to return. "It's beautiful." Lily beamed. "I'm going to give it to Daddy tonight." Amelia hugged her tightly. "I know he'll love it." Even as she said the words, she wondered if they were still true. That evening, Daniel came home unusually cheerful. "I've got exciting news." Amelia looked up from the stove. "What happened?" "Our international expansion was officially approved." "Congratulations." He smiled proudly. "There'll be interviews, more travel, bigger opportunities." He waited, almost expecting admiration. Instead, Amelia simply nodded. "I'm happy your work is going well." Something about her response unsettled him. "That's it? What else should I say?" "I don't know." He laughed awkwardly. "You usually get more excited." She stirred the soup calmly. "People change." The words lingered between them. Daniel stared at her for a moment before forcing another smile. "I suppose they do." Dinner was quieter than usual. Lily did most of the talking. "My teacher says we're planting vegetables next week." "That's wonderful," Amelia said. "Daddy, will you come see the garden?" Daniel hesitated. "When is it?" "Next Thursday." He reached for his phone to check his calendar. Amelia watched him. He frowned. "I might be traveling." Lily's smile faded. "Oh, but I'll try." "You always say you'll try." The innocence of the statement hit the room like a stone dropped into still water. Daniel looked genuinely uncomfortable. "Lily, it's okay." She returned to eating quietly. Amelia reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's hand beneath the edge of the tablecloth. She didn't need to say anything. Children understood love through presence, not promises. Later that night, Daniel found Amelia folding laundry in their bedroom. "You've been distant." She continued folding one of Lily's sweaters. "Have I?" "Yes, if you say so." He leaned against the dresser. "Did I do something?" Amelia almost laughed. The question sounded absurd now. Instead, she answered softly, "Do you really want to know?" He hesitated. "I thought we agreed things had been stressful." "I don't remember agreeing to that. We talked after dinner at the restaurant." "No." She folded another sweater carefully. "You talked." Daniel sighed. "I don't know what's happening to us." Amelia finally looked at him. "I do." For a split second, panic flickered across his face. Then she looked back down at the laundry. "We stopped talking honestly." Relief washed over him so quickly that he almost smiled. "You're right." He stepped closer. "We can fix that." She nodded politely. "Maybe." But inside, she knew something Daniel didn't. Some things couldn't be repaired because they had already been replaced. Trust was one of them. The following morning, after Daniel left, Amelia made 3 phone calls. The first was to Sophia. "I'd like to apply." Sophia laughed with excitement. "I knew you'd say yes eventually. I'm not making promises. You don't have to. We'll start with coffee." Amelia smiled. "Coffee sounds good." Her second call was to Mrs. Henderson. "I was wondering." "Yes? Would you still be willing to be a professional reference?" There was silence. Then warm laughter. "I've been waiting years for you to ask." The third call took the longest. She stared at the number for several minutes before dialing. "Good morning." The calm voice on the other end answered. "Law offices of Patel and Associates." Amelia swallowed. "I'd like to schedule a consultation." "Certainly." "What type of consultation?" She closed her eyes briefly. "Family law." The receptionist's tone remained gentle. "We have an opening tomorrow morning." "I'll take it." When the call ended, Amelia set her phone down carefully. She wasn't filing for divorce. Not yet. She was gathering information. For the first time in months, she was preparing instead of reacting. The law office occupied the top floor of a modern building overlooking the city. Amelia sat in the waiting room, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. A receptionist approached. "Mrs. Carter?" She stood. "This way, please." The attorney's office was simple and elegant. Books lined one wall. Large windows overlooked the skyline. The woman behind the desk smiled warmly. "I'm Priya Patel." Amelia shook her hand. "Thank you for seeing me." "Please." Priya gestured toward the chair. "Tell me what's been happening." For the next hour, Amelia told the truth. Not every detail, just enough. She spoke about giving up her career, supporting Daniel's business, the emotional distance, the lies, the apartment, the storage unit, the documents. When she finished, Priya remained quiet for several moments. Finally, she spoke. "You've done something very important." Amelia frowned. "What?" "You've documented facts instead of acting on emotion." I wasn't sure if that mattered. "It matters enormously." Priya folded her hands. "May I ask you something?" "Of course." "Did you contribute to your husband's business in its early years?" Amelia laughed sadly. "I practically lived inside that business." "What exactly did you do?" As Amelia described the contracts she'd drafted, the financial models she'd built, the investor presentations she'd prepared, and the strategic planning she'd contributed, Priya's expression changed. When Amelia finished, the attorney leaned back in her chair. "I don't think you realize how valuable your contributions were. I was just helping my husband." "No." Priya shook her head firmly. "You were helping build a company." Amelia sat in stunned silence. Priya continued. "And based on what you've told me," she opened a legal pad. I'd strongly advise you not to confront your husband yet. Why? Because people who believe they're about to lose something often begin hiding even more. Amelia thought about the transferred assets, the hidden apartment, the company ownership, the storage unit. Priya looked directly at her. For now, keep observing, keep documenting, and whatever you do, she paused. Don't let him know you've started preparing. As Amelia left the office, she looked up at the city skyline. Months ago, she'd believed her future depended entirely on Daniel. Now, for the first time, she realized her future might depend on remembering the woman she had been before she ever met him. And somewhere across the city, completely unaware, Daniel was about to make a mistake that would change everything. Daniel sat alone in his corner office, staring out at the city skyline. The international expansion should have been all he could think about. Instead, his mind kept drifting back to Amelia. She had changed. Not dramatically. Not in ways anyone else would notice, but he noticed. She no longer asked where he had been. She no longer questioned his late nights. She no longer argued. She smiled politely, answered calmly. And somehow, that frightened him far more than their arguments ever had. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Come in. Vanessa stepped inside, closing the door behind her. You've been avoiding me. I've been busy. She folded her arms. Busy or guilty? Daniel sighed. Don't start. I'm tired of hiding. So am I. Then tell her. Daniel looked away. You make it sound simple. It is. No, it isn't. What are you waiting for? He rubbed his temples. You wouldn't understand. Vanessa laughed bitterly. Try me. Daniel hesitated before answering. If Amelia decides to fight, he stopped himself. Vanessa narrowed her eyes. Fight what? Our divorce. The word hung in the air. You think she'd make it difficult? Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he opened a drawer and pulled out an old photograph. It showed him and Amelia standing beside a folding table covered with papers. The very first business plan. The company's first logo. The dream they had built together. Vanessa looked at the picture. I've never seen that before. Daniel smiled faintly. That was before everything changed. You mean before your business became successful? He shook his head slowly. No. Before I forgot who helped me get there. Vanessa stared at him. For a brief moment, guilt crossed his face. It disappeared almost instantly. I can't change the past. No. Vanessa replied quietly. But you can stop lying about the present. Across town, Amelia sat at a cafe with Sophia. You look different. Amelia smiled. Different how? Stronger. Amelia laughed softly. I don't feel strong. You don't have to feel it. Sophia stirred her coffee. I've known you for 15 years. So, I know the difference between a woman who's falling apart, she smiled warmly, and one who's quietly rebuilding. Amelia looked out the window. I've spent so much time believing I had nothing. You never had nothing. I lost my career. You paused it. I gave up my independence. You can get it back. I wasted years. Sophia reached across the table. No. You invested years. In the wrong person. The words settled heavily between them. Before leaving, Sophia handed Amelia a folder. What's this? Open it. Inside was a consulting proposal. A 6-month contract. Flexible hours. Excellent pay. Remote work. Amelia looked up in surprise. I didn't even interview. You don't need to. What? The director read your old project files. She smiled. He said anyone who solved problems like that deserves another chance. Amelia couldn't speak. Her confidence had been buried for so long that receiving genuine professional respect felt almost unfamiliar. I don't know what to say. Say yes. That afternoon, Amelia walked through the front door carrying the folder. She hadn't felt hopeful in months. She almost forgot what was happening. Almost. Then she noticed Daniel's jacket draped over the sofa. He was home early. Daniel? In here. He was sitting in the study, looking through old financial reports. He looked up. Where have you been? Meeting a friend. He smiled. Good. She placed the folder on the kitchen counter. He noticed it immediately. What's that? Just paperwork. What kind? She looked at him calmly. Work. The word caught him off guard. Work? I've been offered a consulting contract. His smile faded. I thought we agreed you weren't going back. Amelia frowned. I don't remember agreeing. You said Lily needed stability. She does. So I'll still be here for her. Daniel leaned back. You don't need to work. I know. My income is more than enough. I know. So why now? She held his gaze. Because I miss using my mind. The answer seemed to unsettle him. I just don't think the timing is right. For who? What? For me? She paused. Or for you? Silence. He stood. I don't want this turning into an argument. It doesn't have to. You know how demanding my schedule is. I do. If you start working, we'll adjust. He shook his head. I don't like unnecessary changes. Amelia smiled faintly. Life doesn't ask our permission before it changes. For the first time in years, Daniel had no response. Later that evening, Amelia accepted the consulting contract. She signed electronically. Then she opened a brand new notebook. Across the first page she wrote, Chapter 2. Not because she knew what the future looked like, because she had finally accepted that her old life was ending. 2 weeks passed. Amelia threw herself into her work. Within days, she remembered skills she thought she'd forgotten. Strategy, negotiation, planning, problem-solving. Her confidence returned little by little. Clients praised her insight. Her new colleagues valued her opinions. Each compliment repaired a tiny piece of herself that years of neglect had quietly worn away. Daniel noticed. He noticed the way she dressed differently, the way she laughed more, the way she no longer waited by the window for him to come home. One evening he found her working on her laptop. You've been busy. She smiled without looking up. I have. What are you working on? A logistics proposal. He walked behind her chair. His eyes scanned the screen. His expression changed. This is impressive. She looked at him. Thank you. He seemed almost surprised. I forgot how good you are at this. The words escaped before he could stop them. Amelia closed the laptop gently. No. She looked directly into his eyes. You didn't forget. You just stopped noticing. Daniel opened his mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time, he realized the woman he'd spent years underestimating was beginning to remember exactly who she was. And somewhere else in the city, Priya Patel was reviewing the documents Amelia had photographed from the storage unit. One file caught her attention immediately. She read it twice, then a third time. Finally, she reached for her phone. Amelia? Yes? I need you to come to my office tomorrow. Amelia's heart skipped. Is something wrong? Priya's voice was calm. I think I just discovered something your husband was hoping you'd never find. Amelia tightened her grip on the phone. What is it? There was a long pause. I'd rather show you in person. The line went quiet. And for the first time since uncovering Daniel's affair, Amelia realized his betrayal might be only the beginning of the truth. Amelia barely slept that night. Priya's words echoed through her mind. I think I just discovered something your husband was hoping you'd never find. It wasn't the kind of statement an attorney made lightly. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, while Daniel slept soundly beside her. For years, she had envied his ability to fall asleep so quickly. Now she wondered if it came from having already decided which truths he could live with. She quietly got out of bed before dawn, showered, dressed, and prepared Lily's breakfast. Daniel came downstairs as she was packing Lily's lunch. "You're up early." "I have a meeting." "Work?" "Yes." He poured himself coffee. "I might be late tonight." She nodded. "I assumed." He waited for her usual response. There wasn't one. He picked up his briefcase. "See you tonight. Have a good day." He hesitated for a moment, then left. As the front door closed, Amelia whispered to herself, "So will I." Priya was already waiting when Amelia arrived. Several thick folders lay open across the conference table. The attorney motioned for her to sit. "I spent most of last night reviewing the documents you photographed." Amelia took a deep breath. "And?" Priya slid one document across the table. "Do you recognize this signature?" Amelia looked closely. It was Daniel's. "Yes." "And this one?" There was a second signature beneath it. She frowned. "I've never seen that name before." "Neither had I." Priya opened another folder. "The company that owns the apartment is controlled through a holding company." She turned another page. "That holding company is controlled by a family trust." Amelia listened carefully. "And who controls the trust?" Priya met her eyes. "Daniel." Amelia wasn't surprised. But that's not the important part. She placed another document on the table. This trust was established almost 2 years ago. Amelia looked at the date. Her heart sank. That was months before Daniel had first started acting distant. What does that mean? Priya folded her hands. It means he didn't start moving assets after the marriage began falling apart. She paused. He started protecting assets while pretending your marriage was still healthy. The room fell silent. Amelia stared at the paperwork. So, she struggled to finish the sentence. He was planning for divorce. Before I even knew there was a problem? Priya nodded slowly. That's what these documents suggest. Amelia leaned back in her chair. Every memory suddenly looked different. The late nights, the business trips, the secret meetings. While she had been planning birthdays, he had been planning an exit. Priya continued. There's something else. She pulled out another document. This one concerns the company's original ownership. Amelia looked at the faded incorporation papers. I've seen these before. Read the notes in the margin. She looked more closely. Tiny handwritten annotations covered the pages. Her own handwriting. I remember making those changes. Priya smiled. So do I. So do I. Amelia looked confused. What? When you first came here, you kept saying you helped your husband. Yes. Priya shook her head. No. She tapped the incorporation documents. You didn't help. You participated. She opened another folder. I compared these drafts with the final documents. She pointed to several clauses. These sections, she pointed again, were written by you. Amelia blinked. I don't understand. You developed key parts of the company's original operating structure. I was just making suggestions. Priya smiled gently. They weren't suggestions. They became the foundation of the business. Amelia stared at the papers. She had completely forgotten. Not because it hadn't mattered. Because she had convinced herself it hadn't. Priya handed her another file. I had our forensic accountant review the early financial models. Amelia opened it. Every spreadsheet looked familiar. She remembered staying awake until 3 in the morning creating them. The accountant's conclusion, Priya waited, is that the company likely wouldn't have secured its first investment without these projections. Amelia covered her mouth. I made those. Yes. You have emails proving it. Another folder appeared. Printed emails. Timestamps. Attachments. Attachments. Daniel asking for help. Amelia sending revisions. Daniel thanking her. Daniel writing, "I don't know what I'd do without you." She looked away. She couldn't bear reading anymore. "Why would he hide all this?" Amelia whispered. Priya answered carefully. Perhaps he convinced himself it didn't matter. Or, she chose her next words cautiously. Perhaps he hoped you had forgotten. Amelia smiled sadly. I almost did. Meanwhile, Daniel sat in a board meeting. The directors applauded as another quarterly report exceeded expectations. Congratulations. You've built something remarkable. Daniel smiled politely. But his attention kept drifting to his phone. No message from Amelia. No missed calls. Nothing. That should have relieved him. Instead, it made him uneasy. She had stopped asking questions, stopped arguing, stopped chasing him. For years he had wished for peace. Now the silence felt threatening. After the meeting, Richard caught up with him in the hallway. Daniel. Richard. Got a minute? Of course. The older investor closed the office door. I wanted to ask you something. Go ahead. How's Amelia? Daniel looked surprised. She's fine. Richard nodded slowly. Good. There was another pause. You know, Richard smiled thoughtfully. I still remember your first investor presentation. Daniel forced a smile. So do I. I remember your wife answering half the questions. Daniel looked away. She was always good at strategy. Richard's expression grew serious. You were lucky. I know. No. Richard held his gaze. You don't. Daniel didn't respond. Richard continued quietly. Success has an interesting way of rewriting people's memories. Then he walked out. Daniel remained standing alone in the office. For the first time in years, someone had reminded him of a truth he'd worked very hard to stop thinking about. That evening, Amelia returned home carrying copies of every document Priya had given her. She placed them carefully inside a fireproof lockbox she'd ordered online. She wasn't hiding evidence. She was protecting it. As she locked the box, Lily wandered into the study. Mom! Yes? Can I ask you something? Always. Lily climbed onto her lap. When people break promises, Amelia felt her chest tighten. Can they ever fix them? She looked into her daughter's innocent eyes. Sometimes. And if they keep breaking them? Amelia brushed a strand of hair away from Lily's face. Then we have to decide how much of ourselves we're willing to lose waiting for them to change. Lily nodded slowly, though she was too young to understand the full meaning. She hugged her mother tightly. I love you. Amelia closed her eyes. I love you too. More than anything. And in that moment, she made a silent promise. Whatever happened next. Her daughter would never grow up believing that love meant accepting lies, betrayal, or being treated as less than she deserved. Outside, Daniel's car turned into the driveway. Inside the lockbox rested the evidence of years of deception. Neither of them knew it yet. But the next conversation they had would begin unraveling a web of family secrets far larger than either of them had imagined. Daniel walked through the front door, carrying an expensive bottle of wine. I thought we'd celebrate. Amelia looked up from helping Lily with her homework. Celebrate what? The expansion. He held up the bottle with a smile. We've worked hard. The word we almost made her laugh. Instead, she smiled politely. That's thoughtful. Lily jumped up from her chair. Daddy? She wrapped her arms around him. Daniel hugged her tightly. I missed you. You missed sports day, too. His smile faltered. I'm sorry, sweetheart. It's okay. Children forgave quickly. Adults remembered longer. After Lily had gone to bed, Daniel poured 2 glasses of wine. He handed one to Amelia. To new beginnings. She looked at the glass. New beginnings. They clinked their glasses. Neither of them drank immediately. Daniel studied her carefully. "I've been thinking about us." She remained silent. "I know I've been distracted." "You have. I've let work take over." "You have. I want to do better." Amelia looked directly at him. "Why now?" He hesitated. "What do you mean?" "You've ignored every conversation I've tried to have for months." "I know." But suddenly, she tilted her head slightly. "You want to fix everything." Daniel searched for the right words. "I guess I realized how far apart we've become." Amelia nodded slowly. "Distance doesn't happen overnight." "No. It happens one choice at a time." Daniel looked down at his glass. "I made mistakes." "You did. I can change." She didn't answer, because she had learned something important over the past few weeks. Promises were easy. Patterns told the truth. The next morning, Amelia met Priya again. This time, another woman joined them. "Amelia, this is Claire." Claire smiled warmly. "I'm the forensic accountant working with Priya." They shook hands. Claire opened a laptop. "I've finished tracing the financial records." Amelia leaned forward. "What did you find?" Claire clicked through several spreadsheets. "At first glance, everything looked ordinary." She paused. "But then I noticed recurring transfers." She turned the screen. Small monthly payments appeared. None were large enough to attract attention. Individually, they seemed insignificant. Together, they totaled an astonishing amount. Where did the money go? Claire clicked again. The holding company. The one that owns the apartment? Yes. And eventually, she highlighted another column. To several investment accounts. Amelia stared, all while telling you the business needed to reinvest profits. Priya added quietly. Meanwhile, he was quietly building a separate financial life. Amelia's throat tightened. She remembered every conversation. "We can't afford a family holiday this year. We need to be careful. The business comes first." All while money had been flowing somewhere else. Claire opened one final document. "This is where things become interesting." "What is it?" "The original shareholder register." Amelia frowned. "I've seen that. Look carefully." There, beside Daniel's name, was another line. She blinked. Number. That couldn't be right. The name had been crossed out, but not completely. Enough remained visible to read it. Amelia Carter. She looked at Claire. "My name." Claire nodded. "Originally appeared as a shareholder." "I don't remember that." "You may not." Priya slid another document across the table. "A later amendment removed your name." Amelia looked at the signature approving the amendment. "Daniel. Only Daniel. My signature isn't there." "Exactly." Amelia's heartbeat quickened. "Can he do that?" Priya answered carefully. "That depends on several legal questions." She paused. "But based on what we've found, someone appears to have made significant changes without properly documenting your consent." The room fell silent. Amelia wasn't thinking about money. She was thinking about trust. How many decisions had Daniel made alone, while convincing her they were still partners? Across town, Daniel sat in his office reviewing quarterly reports. His assistant knocked. "Mr. Carter?" "Yes?" "Richard is here." Daniel frowned. "Send him in." Richard entered carrying a thin envelope. "I thought you'd want this." "What is it?" "A copy of your first funding agreement." Daniel smiled. "That takes me back." "It should." Richard remained standing. "I've been cleaning out old files." "So?" "I found something you might have forgotten." He placed the agreement on the desk. A yellow sticky note marked one paragraph. Daniel opened it. His expression changed instantly. The highlighted clause read, Investment approval is contingent upon acceptance of the strategic operating model submitted jointly by Daniel Carter and Amelia Carter. Daniel closed the folder immediately. I haven't seen this in years. Richard nodded. I noticed. Silence filled the office. Finally, Richard spoke. You've been giving interviews lately. Daniel looked up. So, you often describe yourself as self-made. Daniel looked away. Richard sighed. That's never been true. Then he turned and left. Daniel remained frozen. For years he'd convinced himself those early contributions had become insignificant. Now, the past was refusing to stay buried. That evening, Amelia tucked Lily into bed. Mom? Yes? Can I ask you something? You can ask me anything. If someone lies because they're scared. She hesitated. Are they still a bad person? Amelia thought carefully before answering. Sometimes good people make bad choices. And sometimes people keep choosing the lie because telling the truth would cost them too much. Lily considered that. Does the truth always come out? Amelia smiled gently. It has a way of finding the light. Lily yawned. I'm glad. So am I. After kissing her goodnight, Amelia quietly closed the bedroom door. She stood in the hallway for several moments. The truth was coming. Not because she wanted revenge, because truth has a way of demanding to be seen. Later that night, while Daniel showered, his phone buzzed on the bedside table. Amelia didn't touch it. She didn't need to. The screen lit up on its own. A message preview appeared. Vanessa, I can't keep pretending. When are you going to tell her about the baby? Amelia felt the air leave her lungs. The baby. Her knees nearly gave way. She steadied herself against the dresser. For a moment the room spun around her. An affair was devastating. A child changed everything. The bathroom door was still closed. Water continued running. Daniel had no idea she'd seen the message. Amelia slowly stepped backward. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply walked into the hallway, closed the bedroom door behind her, and stood in the darkness. The betrayal she'd uncovered was deeper than she'd ever imagined. And somewhere behind the bathroom door, her husband was still rehearsing the next lie he intended to tell. Amelia stood in the hallway, one hand pressed against the wall to steady herself. The message replayed in her mind. When are you going to tell her about the baby? She closed her eyes. There had been a time when news of a baby would have filled her heart with joy. Tonight, it felt like another piece of the life she thought she had shattering beneath her feet. She took a slow, deliberate breath. Then another. By the time Daniel emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, Amelia was sitting in the living room reading a book. At least, it looked like she was reading. She hadn't turned a single page. You didn't come back to bed? I couldn't sleep. He smiled sympathetically. Too much on your mind? You could say that. He kissed the top of her head. Try not to stay up too late. I won't. He returned upstairs. Amelia waited until she heard the bedroom door close. Only then did she allow herself to exhale. She wasn't ready. Not yet. If there was a child involved, she needed to know everything before she spoke. Not because the child had done anything wrong, but because every decision she made from this moment forward would affect Lily's future. The next morning, Amelia arrived at Priya's office carrying only one thing, her notebook. Priya immediately noticed her expression. What happened? Amelia sat down slowly. I saw a message. Priya listened without interrupting. It said, her voice caught. It said, when are you going to tell her about the baby? Silence filled the room. Priya folded her hands. Did you take a photograph? Amelia shook her head. No. That's all right. I was too shocked. That's understandable. Amelia looked down. I don't even know if it's true. Priya nodded. Which is exactly why we don't assume. She reached for her legal pad. We verify. Amelia appreciated that. Over the past weeks, Priya had taught her something invaluable. Facts first, emotions second. Let's proceed carefully. Claire joined them a few minutes later. I've continued tracing financial records. She placed another report on the table. The apartment isn't the only property. Amelia looked up sharply. What do you mean? Claire clicked through several documents. There are two. The second one is smaller. She turned the laptop toward Amelia. It was purchased 6 months ago. Amelia recognized the neighborhood immediately. It was close to a private maternity hospital. Her stomach tightened. Claire continued. The timing aligns with regular payments to a medical practice. Priya looked at Amelia. We still don't know why, but it's another fact, another piece of the puzzle, another hidden room inside a house of lies. Meanwhile, Daniel sat across from Vanessa in the apartment Amelia had seen. She looked exhausted. I had another appointment. He looked concerned. What did the doctor say? Everything's fine. She smiled weakly. The baby is healthy. Daniel nodded, but he didn't smile. Vanessa noticed immediately. You should be happy. I am. Then why do you look terrified? He rubbed his forehead. I've never wanted to hurt anyone. Vanessa looked at him quietly. You already have. He closed his eyes. I know. You've hurt Amelia. You've hurt me. And eventually, she rested a hand on her stomach. You'll hurt this child too, if you keep pretending nothing has changed. Daniel couldn't argue. Because she was right. That evening, Richard invited Daniel to dinner. It wasn't a business meeting. It was personal. They sat on the veranda overlooking Richard's garden. After the meal, Richard poured 2 cups of coffee. I've been meaning to ask you something. Daniel smiled politely. Go ahead. When was the last time you were truly honest with yourself? Daniel frowned. What do you mean? Richard looked at him steadily. I've watched you build an extraordinary company. You've also built an extraordinary illusion. Daniel looked away. I don't know what you're talking about. Richard sighed. You do. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Richard spoke again. I met Amelia before I invested. Daniel nodded. She impressed me. I know. I almost invested because of her. Daniel's head snapped up. What? Richard smiled sadly. You never knew that? No. You gave the presentation. He paused. She gave me confidence. Daniel felt his chest tighten. Richard interrupted gently. You've spent years accepting praise that belonged to both of you. Daniel stared into his untouched coffee. I didn't mean for it to happen. No. Richard nodded. I believe that. But every year you failed to correct the story. You chose the easier version. Daniel couldn't deny it. Because somewhere along the way, he had stopped introducing Amelia as the woman who helped build the company. He had started introducing her simply as my wife. Back at home, Amelia sat alone in the study. The fireproof lockbox rested on the desk. She unlocked it and removed the earliest business documents. For the first time, she read them not as Daniel's wife, but as the professional who had helped create them. She noticed things she'd overlooked before. Entire sections written in her style. Risk analyses she'd authored. Financial models she'd created. Strategic recommendations that had become company policy. She smiled faintly. I really did build this. The realization didn't make her bitter. It made her stronger. Because if she had helped build one successful business, she could build another. One that belonged to her. The next morning, Amelia received an unexpected email. The subject line read, Confidential. There was no sender's name. Only an anonymous address. Her heart raced as she opened it. Inside was a single sentence. You deserve to know the whole truth. Meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. Come alone. Attached was a photograph. Amelia stared at it. It showed Daniel, Vanessa, and someone else. Daniel's mother. All three of them standing outside the same apartment building. The timestamp was 8 months old. Her breath caught. Margaret knew. At least, it appeared she did. The photograph raised more questions than it answered. Was it innocent? Had she been visiting for another reason? Or had Daniel's own mother known about the affair all along? Amelia forwarded the email to Priya immediately. Then she sat back in her chair. For months she had believed the deception belonged only to Daniel. Now, she began to wonder whether the betrayal reached much deeper into the family than she had ever imagined. Amelia read the anonymous email 3 more times. Then she enlarged the photograph. Daniel stood beside Vanessa. Margaret was a few steps away, holding what looked like a gift bag. No one appeared to be arguing. No one looked surprised to see the others. If anything, they looked comfortable. Comfortable. She refused to jump to conclusions. A single photograph could tell 100 different stories. She remembered Priya's advice. Facts first. Within minutes, her phone rang. It was Priya. I saw the email. So did I. Don't go alone. I wasn't planning to. And don't assume the photograph means what it appears to mean. Amelia nodded even though Priya couldn't see her. I know. I'll have someone nearby. You think it's dangerous? I think it's unknown. And unknown situations require caution. Amelia smiled faintly. You're always calm. Priya laughed softly. That's because panic has never won a legal case. The following morning, Amelia arrived at the small botanical garden where the anonymous meeting had been arranged. It was quiet. Families wandered among the flower beds. Retirees sat reading newspapers on benches. Nothing about the place seemed threatening. Priya had arranged to remain nearby without being visible. At exactly 10 o'clock, an elderly woman approached Amelia. She looked to be in her late 60s, neatly dressed, kind eyes, nervous hands. Mrs. Carter? Yes. My name is Eleanor. You sent the email? The woman nodded. I did. Why? Eleanor glanced around before speaking. Because I can't keep pretending I didn't see what I saw. Amelia remained silent. I worked as a concierge in the apartment building for nearly 20 years. Her heart quickened. The building Daniel visits? Yes. I retired last month. Eleanor looked down. I recognized him immediately because he visited so often. Amelia swallowed. How often? The older woman hesitated. At first, once or twice a month. Then every week. She looked genuinely ashamed. I told myself it wasn't my business. Amelia asked quietly. And my mother-in-law? Eleanor sighed. The photograph isn't what you think. Amelia frowned. What do you mean? Margaret came only once. Relief mixed with confusion. Once? Yes. She looked furious. Amelia blinked. Furious? Eleanor nodded. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I remember raised voices. She closed her eyes, trying to remember. Your husband kept saying. She paused. Please, Mom, not here. Amelia listened carefully. And then, your mother-in-law left in tears. The story Amelia had imagined shifted completely. Maybe Margaret hadn't been protecting Daniel. Maybe she had been confronting him. Again, facts replaced assumptions. Eleanor reached into her handbag. I brought something. She handed Amelia a small envelope. I wasn't sure whether to destroy these. Inside were 2 printed incident reports. Apartment staff records. The first documented a loud argument outside Unit 12B. Daniel. Margaret. Date, 8 months earlier. The second report caught Amelia completely off guard. It recorded another disturbance, this time involving Daniel, And his younger brother, Michael. What happened? Eleanor answered quietly. They almost came to blows. Why? I don't know. But I heard your brother-in-law shout. She closed her eyes. She deserves to know the truth. Amelia stared at the paper. Michael? The quiet brother who rarely spoke at family gatherings? The one who always seemed uncomfortable whenever Daniel was around. Had he known? Or had he been trying to tell her? Later that afternoon, Amelia requested to meet Michael. He sounded surprised. Everything all right? I'd rather talk in person. They agreed to meet at a small cafe. Michael arrived looking uneasy. You sounded serious. I am. Amelia placed the incident report on the table.